Hello YouTube and welcome back to World of Warships with Wadres again. And today I have something of a special video for you all. It is something that has been on my, I guess you could say, my cutting room floor for a little bit. And I've just been wanting to do it for a while. And that is a Tier 1's ships review. So that any of you all who are just kind of starting to see if you're interested in getting into the game can see where you're starting off, the kind of ships you're working with, and I guess a little bit on just what you can do with them and where to go once you get a little bit more experience in them. And of course I am going to be starting off just with a quick breakdown of their stats and just outlining all of them, and then I will take them into battle. Starting off with the Erie, the US Tier 1, it has 4,950 hit points, and she does have a main battery of 4 single 152mm cannons with a 9.6 kilometer range. Now, she does have an AA rating of 1, which at this tier you're actually not going to be running into aircraft carriers, so a lot of this is more just cosmetics and really just for show than anything else. But okay, anyway, maneuverability, she gets 20 knots. She has 310-meter turning circle and a rotor shift of 2.8 seconds. And she also has a concealment range of 8.3 kilometers, 5.8 kilometer detection range by air, and 3.6 kilometer detection range in smoke. Next, moving on to the Japanese Tier 1, the Hashidate, we have a ship that has survivability of 5,150 hit points. For her main battery, she has 2 double 120mm cannons with a 10.9 kilometer range. Her anti-air defense rating is 7. Oh, and by the way, some of these ships are buffed by commander skills for their range, so some of these ranges aren't exactly the greatest. Again, Hashidate, AA rating of 7. Maneuverability, she gets 19.5 knots. She has a 270-meter turning circle with a 3-second rotor shift. And her concealment has her detected at 7.5 kilometers, 4.7 kilometers from the air, and 2.8 kilometers in smoke. Moving on to the next ship in line, we have the German Hermeline, which has a survivability rating of 4,500 hit points. And it's pretty fair. For artillery, she has 2 double 128mm cannons with an 11.8 kilometer range. She has an AA rating of 10, the highest of all of the Tier 1 ships, I might add. A maximum speed of 24 knots, a 360-meter turning circle radius, and a rotor shift of 3.3 seconds. She is detected at 8.4 kilometers, 6 kilometers from the air, and 3.3 kilometers from in smokescreen. For the Black Swan, she has a survivability of 6,450 points, which is the second highest among all the Tier 1s. She has 3 double 102mm cannons, which have an 8.7 kilometer range, and the primary thing of note here is that she is firing HE shells in this variation. The battle that you're going to be seeing is actually an earlier variation, which was in line with the British cruiser tech line, which is primarily AP only. But because the Black Swan was deemed a little bit too powerful, they decided to downgrade her a little bit and just give her the HE shells like all of the other Tier 1s. But, I mean, overall, I haven't exactly played the new variation, so anyway. Moving on, she does still have a anti-air rating. She has an AA rating of 2. Again, primarily just cosmetic stuff. Her maneuverability is 19 knots, 320-meter turning circle, and a 2.9 rotor shift. She has a surface detection range of 7 kilometers, 5.4 kilometers from the air, and 2.2 kilometers in smoke. The other ship that you're actually going to be seeing in battle is the Russian Tier 1 cruiser, the Orlan, which has a 4,550 hit point health pool. Her artillery is 2 double 130mm cannons with a range of 11.6 kilometers. For her anti-air, she has a rating of 1, again, still just kind of cosmetic stuff. For her maneuverability, she makes a rather astounding 25 knots. She is the fastest Tier 1 cruiser. She has a 310-meter turning circle radius and a rudder shift of 2.4 seconds. For her concealment... didn't really go into her concealment, did I? Anyway, moving on to the others that I'm not really going to be showcasing, I have the Chang'an, which had 4,400 hit points. She has 2 double 127mm cannons. Her AA rating is 10 again. She has a 19 knot speed, 240-meter turning circle, and 2-second rudder shift. And for her concealment, she has 6.1 kilometers, 4.3 kilometers air detect, and 2.3 kilometer detection range in smoke. And overall, not exactly a bad build. And of course, last but not least, we have the Tier 1 French cruiser, the Bougainville, which has the highest hit pool of all the Tier 1s at 7,400 hit points. She has 3 single 139mm cannons with a 9.5 kilometer range, and these cannons are just in the range where once you get a 10 skill or 10 point captain on her, she can benefit fully from advanced firing training and basic firing training, which increase reload time and firing range. She does have 19 knots on the surface with a 350-meter turning circle, 3.7 second rudder shift, and she gets detected at 8 kilometers, a 6 kilometer detection range in the air, and a 3.3 kilometer detection range in smoke. Now, all of these ships are rather phenomenal little boats, to say the least, and I do think that they are definitely good starting points. The one that I do have to say is the most versatile, however, is the USS Erie, in that it has the 4 individual cannons, 2 in front, 2 in the back, which gives it a lot more, I guess I could say, flexibility as opposed to her counterparts. And just, again, just a lot more versatility overall. She's a very capable ship and can definitely do substantial amounts of damage to everything. The Orlan is a little bit more specific to the Russian, and those guns have a little bit more punch. They have a higher muzzle velocity, so the trajectories are flat, and so on and so forth. I am going to say that I do have a couple of these ships with 10 skill point captains on them, mainly because I do have some missions that I've finished, specifically a couple campaigns, and most notably scenario missions, which, when you get 5 stars, they give you a 10-point captain for a nation branch. And I just decided to keep them with the ships that they were basically assigned to in the beginning. And it's always nice to be able to push your range or speed up your reload more and more and more. I do have a couple of variations on my commander skills, but primarily preventative maintenance and either expert marksman and adrenaline rush, as well as moving up to advanced firing training and basic firing training for higher skilled captains. The Bougainville, as I already mentioned, has the largest health pool of Tier 1s at 7,400, and I mean, she's definitely no slouch, but I think it's more to make up for her relative lack of firepower in that she only has the 3 slightly larger guns. So it's more just to bring her in line in her survivability, making up for her lack of firepower overall. And, I mean, again, these are decent starting place ships. And you'll definitely see what I mean when I take them into the battle here in a little bit. And of course, backing up to what I was saying again about the Black Swan, this is the HE version of the Black Swan, which was introduced, I think, in either the 7.8 or 7.9 patch. And the reason she was bumped down was just because, as the only Tier 1 cruiser that was firing AP shells, to stick in line with the national flavor for the Brits, she was just deemed to be too powerful. She had an edge that the opposing ships did not, and so they decided to get rid of her AP and just slap on HE instead. And that is one of the notes that I do want to make in the battles that I'm going to be showing you, in that the recording I have was actually done before the switchover. It was done a couple of months ago. So the battle you will be seeing from the Black Swan was when she was firing AP shells and not HE. Other than that, I guess you can say her shell ballistics are going to be pretty much the same, so you're still going to have a reasonable idea of how she performs. It's just that you're going to have the very dramatic difference between HE and AP to take into consideration. I'm also only going to be showing the first 5 ships: the Erie, the Hashidate, the Orlan, the Hermeline, and the Black Swan. I am not going to be showcasing the Chengon and the Bougainville just for time constraints. Now, one of the things that I do want to make showing this window here is that, for the most part in the matchmaker, you're only really going to be seeing Tier 1 or Tier 2 ships in the matchmaker anytime you start off in World of Warships. Just because when they were capable of seeing Tier 3s, the Tier 1s were just kind of getting walked all over. They really don't have the firepower to be exceptionally capable, and just it overall detracted from their performance when they were capable of being matched against higher tier ships. In fact, when I remember starting the game, there were a couple of matches even where I seem to recall ending up in matches against Tier 4 ships, which at that point you can pretty much call your Tier 1 ship goodbye. But in several patches ago, they introduced limits in the matchmaker where the Tier 1 ships can really only see Tier 1, Tier 2 matches, and I have to say thank goodness for that, because it's definitely a good thing for keeping newer players going in the game. You're not being so dramatically up-tiered that you are absolutely irrelevant, and it does give you at least some semblance of what it is like to be up-tiered when you're placed against Tier 2 cruisers like, say, the Chester, and a couple of the other ones that are just a little bit more powerful. Overall, though, there are definitely some good points to the newer matchmaker. But because the older variations of the game did exist, these ships were still outfitted with some sort of anti-air armament, which, as you saw in my little preview, are still all present. And the reason that's important is because with the previous versions where they could see up to Tier 4, that also meant that they could see the initial tiers of aircraft carriers. And while their AA ratings weren't exactly stellar, at least they could try to defend themselves from aircraft carriers somewhat. Now, they pretty much never see aircraft carriers with the matchmaker as it is, so those AA ratings are literally there for no other reason than cosmetics and for show, nothing more. And I do have to say they definitely benefit very much from it, just because, again, they're not being up-tiered so dramatically that they are having to face ships that they really have no countermeasure against. I mean, even at Tier 4, an AA rating of 10 is pretty abysmal. And that was, as you saw, the highest any of these ships is even capable of getting to begin with. So, yeah. It's all for the better. And right here, I think you can see what I mean earlier when I was saying that the Erie has a lot more versatility in its main battery, having the 4 individual firing turrets as opposed to the double turrets of just about all the other ships. Mainly in that you can actually limit the amount of firepower you're putting onto the target. Whereas for the two-gun turret ships, anytime they fire, they're putting all of their firepower from that turret onto the enemy ship. Which, if you only need 1 shell to kill the target, why use 2? I mean, okay, suppose you miss with 1, that argument could be made, but really, it's just one of those debatable questions. But the Erie, you can choose to fire one shell and hold the other shell for another target. Whereas, say, the Hermeline, the Hashidate, those double turrets, they have no choice but to fire whatever they're looking at with. And when you consider that those double turrets could be their sole, one double turret could be their sole forward armament, and they're, say, bow onto a target, that may not necessarily be desirable. They have to be a little bit more picky about their targets. Which target are they going to do more damage to? Which target is going to be I guess, where is their firepower going to be more effective? Whereas the Erie has the versatility to spread its fire around a little bit more. And, I mean, I am a decent player, so I know my score is going to be exceptional compared to just about anybody else at Tier 1. Call it seal clubbing if you will. It is what it is. I was doing the recordings for these videos just so that you could get a feel for the ships, and nothing more. And just what the ships are capable of more than anything else. For the purpose of time constraints, something else I've done is I've cut down a lot of the initial travel time, where you're starting in the spawn point and moving to the point where you begin engagements. Instead, I've cut out a good bit of that and really just kind of started the videos, or the individual segments, just shy of where the actual battle started. Just because, again, I'm trying to keep this video as short as possible, and it's still going to be something of a 30-minute video. I do apologize for that, but I did kind of want to get them all done in one, I guess I could say, one big smash. And I suppose I definitely did that, but it does result in a substantially longer video than I intended. Now, in this battle here with the Hermeline, you can kind of see what I mean a little bit about the versatility of the Erie versus the other ships. You can really only get your guns to certain angles in some cases, so the Erie does also benefit from that a little bit with its number 3 turret, I think, being able to reach a little bit more forward than its number 4. And just overall, you're limited in the fact that when you for each trigger pull, you have to fire all of the individual turrets. You can't single fire any of your guns. So when you're having to fire basically all of your forward turret or all of your rear turret, having them split into individual single battery cannons is a substantial increase in versatility regardless of how you look at it. Now, your ballistics are still going to be effective regardless, but at least you have, again, that just greater versatility, greater functionality. And I think for that reason, that is why the Erie is actually one of the better of the Tier 1 ships. It may not have the greatest hull pool or anything by comparison, but it is still a very, very capable ship, and it definitely does its job. It also does a reasonable job of kind of giving you the idea of how the American cruisers are built, at least to start things off. Because once you move up to the Tier 2s, Tier 3s, you still have a lot of very independent guns. So, I mean, even when you get up to Tier 5 at the Omaha, you still have a lot of very independent guns. It's not really until you get Tier 6 that you have the much larger turreted guns as a mainstay. So that single gun system is something you're actually going to be working with for quite a while on the US ships. In fact, if anything, the other cruiser lines do you a bit of a disservice, because they start you off with turreted cannons, and with a couple of exceptions, you're going straight to individually turreted ships. So the Erie is probably the best, I guess I can say, flavor preview for the Tier 1 ships, in that she is a little bit more honest to what you're going to be dealing with for the longer period of time. But that being said, all of the other ships do still have some decent strengths to them. I mean, the Hermelin, as you just saw, is a very capable ship. I still pulled off a relatively phenomenal battle. I got 3 kills on the Hermelin, and, I mean, that wasn't even really a phenomenal commander either. Next up is the Tier 1 Japanese destroyer, the Hashidate. Now, the one thing you will also notice is that all of these battles are pretty much happening on the same map, which, yeah, I do have to say, the Tier 1, Tier 2 maps are very, very limited. You don't have quite the variability and flexibility that you see when you start dealing with ships at higher tiers, where you've got like 6, 7, 8, 9 different maps that you could end up on, as opposed to Tier 1, where I think at best you've got like 2 maps that you can go around to. And they're relatively small maps because these are slow ships. You don't want to spend half the match just getting into combat range in the first place. So I can definitely understand what's going on. I can understand why the decisions were made. And overall, again, these are just ships that are here to give you an idea of what the gameplay is like. They are not meant to be the win-all, beat-all for the game. Now, I can understand that there are some players who just simply enjoy sitting at the lower tiers anyway, and just enjoy popping off low-tier ships just for the fun of it. And for those who do, all power to them. Me, I prefer the greater challenges at the higher tiers. Now, one of the nice things about all the Tier 1 ships, and this is basically standard across the board, is that these are the ships which are designed to be your introduction to the game. They are intended to introduce you to the game mechanics. They are to get you used to the shell dynamics, leading your targets, how the health pools work, how the hits work, and just the various, I guess I could say, game mechanics that exist. And they slowly wean you into others as the game goes. For example, at Tier 2, you get destroyers starting to pop up. At Tier 3, you see battleships, and of course at Tier 4, you see aircraft carriers come out. So you get steadily, I guess I could say, weaned into the game, and the various dynamics that can change or affect the overall battle as you go. And, it's definitely a fair starting point. You start off at basics, which cruisers are definitely about as basic as they get. They are small, simple ships The shell dynamics are easy to work with, easy to figure out, and for the most part, just definitely good showcases for how the game is going to work and progress. And you also get the feel for how credit earnings and experience earnings are going to be based, in that you also realize that your performance in a match will directly influence your payout for both experience, credits, and so on and so forth. Overall, they're definitely a very, very good starting place. And one of the other things that I've done on a couple of occasions where, say, I decide to back out of World of Warships for a little bit and play something else. Like, say, I decided to go onto my PlayStation and play Mass Effect, or switch over to another PC game or something. When I come back, I've been out of the game just long enough where I'm kind of getting a little fuzzy with my gameplay, and it just helps me get back into the swing of the game, get back into the field with the ships, just being able to pull out the tier 1s and say, okay, get used to my aim again, get used to the ship movement, the lead, and so on and so forth, and then work back into my upper tier ships. Now, granted, again, I haven't exactly done that very often, just because World of Warships is a very, very compelling and intriguing game. It certainly has a lot of replay factor, and it keeps things going, keeps things interesting. And as they bring more and more ships in, too, that's also true as well. It just keeps the game fresh and keeps the game going, as opposed to something that you've replayed 1,000 times over and it's still the same thing each and every time. But coming back to the basics is always a good way to just get back into the game if you've been out of it for a little bit, and just kind of get the hang of everything all over again. And the nice thing is, if you leave World of Warships for a little bit, it's not like a subscription service or anything like that. So if you back out and decide to come back a month, 2 months later, all of your progress is still there. It's not something that's been saved, that's been deleted, or a subscription has lapsed, unless of course you're in with a premium account. But otherwise, all of your progress, all of your ships, they're still there. And at most, the only thing that's changed is the ships and maps that you can unlock as far as just new content. But you haven't had level caps that have been changed, you haven't had consumables really that have been changed, you don't have new gimmicks, new changes, whatnot, that you have to get used to all over again. You don't really have entire game overhauls really that completely changed the way the game is played. You don't have entirely new mechanics that you need to learn, unless of course you're talking about the upcoming aircraft carrier rework, which is, I'm not getting into that in this video. But even then, it's still few and far between. The changes are usually very minimal, so once you're used to your shell dynamics and whatnot, coming back into the game, just playing tier 1s for a little bit, you're pretty much ready and raring to go for getting back into your tier 7s, 8, 9s, 10s, so long as you remember how to play them. Now, here's where I was, what I was telling you about with the Black Swan, in that my recording was way back when it still had AP shells only. In fact, it was the only Tier 1 cruiser for this match that had the ability to even mount AP shells. And they were trying to do that, again, to keep it in line with the other British cruisers, or the rest of the British cruiser line, I should say, so that you could get the idea of the fact that, hey, you're in a ship line that will only have AP available to it. Well, apparently because of just the sheer outstanding performance of this ship, which once I start getting broadsides, you will really start to see come out in all of its glory. Yeah, citadels. If you were watching any of the previous replays closely, you'll note that citadels were actually kind of a tricky thing to get for just about all of the other ships. Slip into the Black Swan, however, and citadels. Citadels out the yin-yang. I've already scored more citadels in this match with the Black Swan than I think I got in all of the previous matches combined. And they're just going to keep, that number is just going to keep climbing as this match progresses. So I can understand where they were coming from when they said that the Black Swan, for all intents and purposes, was a little bit too powerful of a ship with the AP loadout. And that is why they have changed it up in recent patches to only be firing HE, or explosive shells, instead of armor piercing. Just because, yeah, way too much power in a single ship. I mean, I literally dominated the engagement, the one engagement that I had in that very short opening sequence there. The other ships had little to no chance, and on top of that, once they actually showed me a broadside, there was nothing they could do to dish out anywhere near the amount of damages. Sorry about that, we are being actively pinged, sir. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, that's just how these ships work. There you are, AG only spammers now, even the Black Swan, and just very good cases for how the game's going to progress. Anyway, on that note, this battle's almost over, and aside from the results, today's going to be a quick finish out. So I will just say I will let you all go. I do hope you all like and subscribe to my channel. I hope you like what you've seen. This is definitely a fair video for the introductory, I guess I could say, levels to World Warships. And I hope you all enjoyed it. Anyway, I shall let you all go, and I will catch you all next time.